Picture this situation. It is the year 2010. You are the CEO of a successful, or so you thought, manufacturing company in Valencia, Spain. Or perhaps you own a family factory on the outskirts of Milan. Your business survived the crises of the 80s, the storms of the 90s, and you have always known one golden rule. If the market crashes, you have a red button, an emergency exit. This button is called national currency devaluation. It is the economic equivalent of an adrenaline shot straight into the heart of a dying patient. For centuries, whenever a country's competitiveness collapsed and neighbors started crushing you with lower prices, the government would hit this button. The currency would drop by 15 or 20%. Overnight, your goods became cheaper for the entire world. Exports skyrocketed. Factories hummed again. Tourists flooded the beaches. Problem solved. It was blunt, it drove up inflation, but it saved jobs. It allowed you to survive. But now it's 2010. Your German competitors are methodically destroying your business, eating your market share, and undercutting your prices. By muscle memory, you reach for that red button. Your hand hovers in the air. The button is gone. Where the lever of salvation used to be, there is now a blank wall with the logo of the European Central Bank. In that moment, a chilling realization hits you. In 1999, when your country joined the Eurozone to the tune of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, you didn't just change the design of the banknotes in your wallet. You didn't just make life easier for tourists. You voluntarily handed the keys to your economic prison cell to a warden who lives in Frankfurt and whose interests are diametrically opposed to yours. Welcome to the Euro prison. This is the story of the most ambitious monetary experiment in human history, designed so that the entry fee was a nominal sum, but the exit price is death. Right now, open the comment section. I guarantee half the viewers are typing that the euro is the guarantor of stability, that it saved Europe from wars and chaos. Don't rush to conclusions. Give me 45 minutes. We are going to take this mechanism apart, screw by screw, and by the end of this video, you might just see that the stability we are told about is the stability of a graveyard. This isn't just a story about money. It is a story about how one nation built a machine to siphon wealth from the pockets of its neighbors into its own vaults, using currency as a weapon of mass economic destruction. And the scariest part? There is no way out of this system. Let's break down the mechanics. Why is a single currency not just a means of payment, but a noose around an economy's neck? When 11 countries physically adopted the euro on January 1st, 2002, they committed an act of unprecedented economic disarmament. They surrendered the two most powerful tools a sovereign state possesses: independent monetary policy and a floating exchange rate. To understand the scale of the catastrophe, we need to look back at the gold standard of the 19th century. Economists love this parallel, and for good reason. Under the gold standard, every country's currency was rigidly pegged to gold. If, say, Portugal bought more goods from abroad than it sold, gold physically left the country. The money supply contracted. Cash became scarce. Loans became expensive. What happened next? Prices fell. Wages were slashed. Unemployment rose. This continued until Portuguese labor became so cheap that people started buying their goods again. But the price was horrific. Poverty, hunger, social riots. That is exactly why, in the 20th century, the world abandoned the gold standard in favor of flexible currencies that could absorb shocks. The euro is the reincarnation of the gold standard, but in an even more rigid, sadistic form. The Eurozone replicated this rigidity, but removed even the theoretical benefits. Unlike gold, which could flow back, the Eurozone's mechanisms blocked the ability to restore balance. Imagine this. Spain is in a recession, while Germany is booming. Spain desperately needs to lower interest rates so businesses can take cheap loans and restart. But Germany fears inflation. It needs high rates. Who wins? The European Central Bank sets for 19 completely different economies. And historically, that rate has always been closer to Germany's needs than to the needs of the periphery. Spain can no longer devalue the peseta to make its hotels and wines cheaper for the British or Americans. The only path to restoring competitiveness left by the system is called by the dry term internal devaluation. Sounds like a boring textbook term, doesn't it? But in reality, it means you have to lower the prices of your goods without touching the exchange rate. How do you do that? Only one way: cut costs. And the main cost in any economy is people. You have to slash wages by 20, 30, 40%. You have to fire millions of people to create an army of unemployed workers willing to work for pennies. You have to destroy domestic demand so that prices fall. The system is programmed so that the only way to fix an error is to destroy the well-being of your own population. From 2000 to 2010, while wages in the rest of Europe grew by 15 to 20%, real incomes in Spain were effectively frozen. And then, hell arrived. Unemployment in Greece exploded from 7.8% in 2008 to nearly 25% in 2015. Among the youth in peripheral countries, every second person was left without work, over 50%. This isn't a glitch in the system. It isn't a bug. It is a feature. It is a mechanism built into the design. By joining the Eurozone, countries signed a contract. If anything goes wrong, if the economy overheats or a bubble bursts, we agree to take the hit ourselves. We have no airbag. We will break with our faces against the asphalt. But here is where the story gets truly dark. While the countries of Southern Europe, the so-called periphery, voluntarily strapped themselves into this corset, one country figured out how to hack the system and turn it into a vacuum for extracting money. Let's talk about Germany, the locomotive of Europe, the model of efficiency. We are often told that Germany's success is the result of brilliant engineering, hard work, and high-tech machinery. That is only partially true. The main secret of the German economic miracle of the 2000s is the cynical and calculated suppression of its own workers to capture foreign markets. Let's rewind to the late 90s. Germany was called the sick man of Europe. The economy was stagnating, and the costs of reunification with East Germany were colossal. And then, the elites made a decision that changed the fate of the continent. January 20th, 2000. Trade unions and employer associations in Germany conclude, essentially, a pact. The essence is simple. Increases in labor productivity will no longer lead to wage increases. Instead, profits will go toward increasing competitiveness and job retention. Klaus Zwickel, head of the powerful IG Metall union, proposed this idea back in 1995, but by 2000, it had become state religion. It was called the policy of wage restraint. The math was murderously effective. From 1999 to 2008, unit labor costs in Germany remained absolutely flat, zero growth. And in the manufacturing sector, where BMWs and Siemens turbines are made, labor costs actually fell by 9%. At the same time, in the rest of the Eurozone, wages were growing normally, in line with inflation. What happened next? German goods became artificially cheaper than their neighbors' goods. Not because they were better quality, but because the German worker was being underpaid his share of the profit. In 2000 alone, German exports jumped by 17%. Germany became the export champion of the world. But here is the paradox. 2/5 of this growth came not from China or the USA, but from neighbors in the Eurozone. France, Italy, Spain, Portugal. Their markets were flooded with German products. German corporations destroyed competitors across the continent. An Italian shoe manufacturer couldn't compete because he paid his workers a fair wage, while his German competitor paid a frozen one. And the Italian couldn't devalue the lira to level the playing field. He had the same currency as the German. But wait, you might say, if exports were booming, Germany must have been prospering. The Germans must have been swimming in luxury. And this is the most twisted part of the scheme. Domestic demand in Germany from 2000 to 2005 grew at a rate of negative 0.1% per year. Germans weren't getting richer. They worked more, exported more, but bought less themselves. The entire economy was reoriented toward external demand. This created what economists call an imbalance. Germany accumulated gigantic surpluses. The periphery accumulated gigantic deficits. But money has to circulate. Where did these trillions of euros that Germany earned from exports go? They didn't go into wages for Hans and Fritz. They went into German banks. And banks need to make money. And they found the perfect clients. Here begins Act 3, the great illusion of wealth. Imagine you removed currency risk. Before, lending to a Greek or a Spaniard meant a German banker was taking a risk. What if the drachma crashes? Now, there is no risk. One currency. And German banks started flooding the periphery with cheap money. Look at Spain. When the country switched to the euro, interest rates collapsed. The ECB set rates based on a stagnating Germany. But for a fast-growing Spain, these rates were too low. It was like fighting a fire with gasoline. Real interest rates in Spain fell by 4 percentage points. Mortgage terms grew from 10 years in 1990 to 28 years by 2007. Suddenly, a Spanish family that could previously only dream of a small apartment could afford a villa. And they started borrowing. The credit boom was insane. Lending growth exceeded 25% per year. In 2006 alone, Spain started construction on 856,561 housing units. Think about that number. Almost 1 million new homes in a single year in a country of 40 million people. To put that in perspective, in that same year, Spain was building more housing than Germany, France, and the UK combined. This wasn't driven by demographics. This was an orgy of cheap money. Construction and real estate bloated to 18.5% of GDP, double the European average. Where was the money coming from? From Germany. From mid-2001 to mid-2005, German banks raised approximately 250 billion euros through complex financial instruments and pumped them into Spain, Portugal, Ireland, and Greece. The scheme was perfect, closed loop, and vicious. German workers are underpaid, ensuring super profits for corporations. These super profits settle in German banks. The banks lend this money to Spaniards and Greeks. The Spaniards and Greeks use this money to buy German cars, machine tools, and equipment. The money returns to Germany. Germany got richer. The periphery got deeper into debt. It was like a drug dealer giving the first dose for free and then lending the addict money so he could only buy from him. Greece is a separate tragedy. There, the money didn't go into housing, but into state consumption. The government borrowed to pay wages and pensions, hiding the real budget deficit. It was like giving a teenager an unlimited credit card, and no one said stop, because the bankers were profiting from the interest. And then the music stopped. Summer 2007. The U.S. subprime mortgage market collapses. Global credit markets freeze. European banks that funded their lending through reselling debt suddenly find themselves stranded. In Spain, the correction wasn't just harsh, it was lethal. Housing starts collapsed from 856,000 in 2006 to 34,000 in 2014, a 25-fold drop. An entire industry was wiped off the face of the earth. Unemployment in construction rose by 170% in just 1 year. By 2012, total unemployment in Spain hit 27%. Among youth, 53%. Housing prices crashed by 37%. Families found themselves trapped, owing the bank 200,000 euros for an apartment now worth 100,000, with no job to pay for it. And this is where the trap snapped shut. Spain couldn't devalue the currency. It couldn't print money to save the banks. It couldn't lower rates. The full weight of the blow fell on the shoulders of ordinary people. From 2007 to 2013, Spain lost 3.8 million jobs. Imagine that. Almost 4 million people, engineers, waiters, builders, nurses, thrown onto the street. But if you think Spain had it bad, look at Greece. January 2010. The new Greek government opens Pandora's box. It turns out the budget deficit isn't 6%, as the previous administration lied, but over 15%. For years, Greece had been falsifying statistics with the help of Goldman Sachs to meet Eurozone criteria. Markets panicked. If Greece lied, who else? Portugal? Italy? Investors stopped lending. Bond yields shot into the stratosphere. In May 2010, the EU and IMF allocate 110 billion euros to Greece. But this wasn't an act of mercy. It was a rescue operation for German and French banks. The Greeks held billions in debt owed to banks in Frankfurt and Paris. If Greece defaulted, the German banking system could have collapsed. So the EU gave money to Greece so that Greece could immediately give it back to the German banks. They called it Aid to Greece. In reality, it was an operation to transfer the losses of private banks onto the shoulders of European taxpayers. In exchange for this aid, they demanded the impossible from Greece: brutal austerity, cutting pensions, wages, healthcare spending in the middle of a recession. It is like forcing a patient with pneumonia to run a marathon in freezing temperatures. The result? Greek GDP collapsed by 25%. The economy shrank by a quarter. That is, Great Depression levels seen in the US in the 1930s. Suicides rose by 35%. The prevalence of clinical depression jumped from 3% to 12%. Greece's debt-to-GDP ratio rose from 127% to 179%. Not because the debt increased that much, but because the denominator of the equation, GDP, was destroyed. A generation of young Greeks and Spaniards was sacrificed. I spoke with Miguel, a programmer from Madrid. He graduated university in 2010 and spent 2 years sending out resumes. 300 applications, 0 responses. Eventually, he moved to Berlin. "Spain didn't want me," he said. "Germany did." This is called brain drain. The periphery spent billions educating doctors and engineers, only for them to leave and boost Germany's GDP. It is a hidden subsidy from the poor to the rich. But the most interesting part is hidden deep under the hood of the financial system. It is something the news stays silent about because it is too complex. In simple terms, it is the Eurozone's ledger. When a Greek transfers money to Germany, the Bank of Greece records a liability, and the German Bundesbank records a credit. Before the crisis, these balances were close to zero. But when the thunder struck, money ran from south to north. Spaniards, Italians, Greeks massively moved deposits into safe German banks. This showed up in the Target 2 system. By May 2023, the German Bundesbank held a colossal credit, more than 1 trillion euros. This is money that the rest of Europe owes Germany within the central bank system. Italy and Spain, conversely, have a combined debt of over 1 trillion euros. Why does this matter? Because it makes leaving the Eurozone impossible. Imagine Italy decides to return to the lira. At that moment, it would have to settle its Target 2 liabilities, hundreds of billions of euros, in hard currency. Italy doesn't have that money. Exit means instant default, the collapse of the banking system, and a legal war over trillions. It is a trap. Germany holds the periphery hostage with its exports, and the periphery holds Germany hostage with its debts. If the South collapses, Germany loses 1 trillion euros of its savings. If the South tries to leave, it destroys itself. In a 2017 letter from Mario Draghi to the European Parliament, it was clearly stated, upon exiting the Eurozone, Target 2 liabilities must be settled in full. It was a threat. Target 2 isn't a payment system. So, where have we arrived after 25 years of this experiment? The euro promised convergence, the narrowing of living standards. Poor countries were supposed to catch up to the rich. What we got was divergence. The gap between North and South today is wider than it was before the euro was introduced. Southern Europe has become poorer, lost its industry and its best people. Germany has become richer, consolidated industrial chains, and received an influx of skilled migrants. The peripheral countries face a choice between two evils. Option A, stay in the Eurozone. This means eternal stagnation, eternal austerity, the status of a semi-colony, and living by rules written in Berlin. It is the Japanification of the economy, only without Japan's wealth. Option B, leave. This means financial Armageddon, bank runs, hyperinflation of the new currency, and the loss of the population's savings in the short term. No politician will dare choose option B, so they choose the slow decay, of option A. The problem with the Eurozone is that it tries to be a federation, like the USA, without being one. In the US, if Texas booms and Mississippi struggles, the federal government takes taxes from Texas and pays benefits in Mississippi. And no one riots because we are all Americans. In Europe, this doesn't exist. There is no fiscal union. The German taxpayer will never agree to pay for a Greek pension on a permanent basis. And without such transfers, a currency union is doomed to imbalances. You cannot have a single interest rate for a Ferrari and a Fiat. The euro is a financial Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Countries checked in, handed their passports and wallets to the reception, and now wander the corridors, watching as the rich guests from the penthouse dictate the dinner menu. So here is my question to you.
Is the euro a success story that ensured peace on the continent? Or is it a ticking time bomb planted under the foundation of Europe, which one day will blow this house to splinters? Can a currency union exist without a single budget and a single government? Write in the comments. I am especially interested in the opinion of those living in Europe who see the prices in stores with their own eyes. And if you think your country would be better off returning to a national currency, tell me how you plan to survive exit day. I would love to read your rescue plans. It's easier than reforming the Eurozone's fiscal rules. And subscribe to the channel. In the next episode, we will ask an even more uncomfortable question. Is Germany actually as strong as it looks? Or is it a colossus with feet of clay, whose well-being rests only on the weakness of its neighbors? Links to Bundesbank data, Target 2 charts, and IMF reports are in the description. The numbers there are even scarier than my story. This is Independent Monetary Historian, where we dissect systems designed to keep you in the dark. See you next time.